You'll never be anything but dead weight. This family doesn't need you." The words hit me harder than the glass shattering on the table. My uncle's voice carried through the dining room like a judge's gavel, sharp and final. For a second, I thought he might have been joking, some dark attempt at humor. But no one laughed. Not one of the dozen relatives crammed around that oak table, so heavy it looked like it could break the floor. The only sound was the faint drip of red wine leaking from his cracked glass, spreading like blood across the white tablecloth. I could feel the heat of all their stares pressing into my skin. The roast beef had gone cold on my plate, untouched, the smell of burnt edges mixing with Aunt Carol's choking perfume. Someone coughed, someone else scraped a fork against porcelain, but nobody said a word in my defense. I wanted to swallow, to breathe, but my throat had closed up tight, and all I could taste was bitterness rising like bile. He didn't stop there. He leaned back in his chair, big belly pressing against the buttons of his shirt, and sneered. "Look at you. 30 years old, still floating from job to job. Couldn't even keep your last one longer than 6 months. What do you bring to this family, huh? Nothing. Absolutely nothing." I forced my eyes to stay on him, though my heart was slamming against my ribs like it wanted to escape. His face was ruddy from drink, sweat glistening at his temples despite the draft from the old ceiling fan humming above us. The blades clicked with every rotation, louder and louder in my head until I thought they'd snap. My fists were tightening in my lap, fingernails digging crescents into my palms under the tablecloth. I told myself, "Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing you break." Across from me, my cousin Jason smirked into his wine glass, pretending to sip, but clearly savoring the show. He'd always loved moments like this, times when his father painted me small, pathetic. He leaned back, crossed his arms, his gold watch catching the light. I could almost hear him thinking, "He's right, you'll never be me." I wanted someone, anyone, to intervene. My aunt, my grandmother, one of the cousins. But they all shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting away, pretending to focus on the food that none of us were touching. The roasted potatoes were growing a film of grease, their smell thick and heavy in the air. My grandmother's hands trembled as she reached for her glass, the rings on her fingers clinking against the crystal. But she didn't say a word. Nobody did. That silence was worse than the insult. It was agreement, or at the very least, consent. My uncle leaned forward then, his face so close I could smell the sourness of whiskey on his breath. His voice dropped to a growl. "You're useless, and deep down, you know it. You'll never make it in this family. And the sooner you accept that, the better." The words carved into me like knives. My chest burned, my vision blurred, but I smiled. I smiled, because if I didn't, I would have screamed. That was the night everything shifted. That was the night the seed was planted. The room felt suffocating. I pushed back my chair, the legs screeching against the wood floor. Everyone flinched at the noise, but no one stopped me as I stood. My knees felt weak, but I made myself tall. My voice was steady, though my insides were shaking like a storm. "Excuse me," I said, as politely as if I'd been asked to pass the salt. Then I walked out, leaving the clinking glasses, the untouched food, and the stain of red wine creeping across the table like a wound. The hallway was dim and smelled faintly of mothballs and lemon polish. My footsteps echoed against the tiles, each one louder than the last, until I shoved open the front door and the night air hit me. Cold, sharp, and clean. I sucked it in like water after drowning. Behind me, laughter picked up again, awkward and forced, as if my humiliation had been nothing more than a momentary interruption to their dinner theater. Out on the porch, the crickets were singing, the world turning as if nothing had happened. I stared into the darkness of the yard, the faint glow of a street lamp casting long, twisted shadows across the grass. My heart was still racing, pounding in my ears, but another sound pushed through it, my uncle's voice, echoing, repeating, embedding itself deep. "Useless. Deadweight. Nothing." I gripped the railing until the old wood dug splinters into my palms. I didn't feel them. All I felt was fire, a deep, slow burn that started in my gut and spread outward, filling my chest, my throat, my head. It was rage, pure and sharp, but underneath it, something steadier. A vow. Inside, the muffled sound of glassware clinking and voices rising again told me the night had moved on without me. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I knew then, one day, I'd make him choke on those words. I didn't go back inside. I walked down the cracked sidewalk, past the rusted mailbox with the family name peeling off in faded gold letters. The cool night breeze smelled of cut grass and distant smoke from someone's fireplace. My shoes scuffed against gravel, rhythm steady, like a drumbeat to my own thoughts. Every step replayed the scene at the table. My uncle's face, red and gleaming with sweat. Jason's smug grin. The silence of everyone else. It played again and again, each time etching deeper into me, until my jaw ached from clenching. Half a block away, I stopped. I turned back once, staring at the glow of the dining room window. Through the curtains, I could see shadows moving, gestures, laughter, life going on without me. A bitter taste coated my tongue. My stomach churned. I almost spit into the grass, but instead, I whispered to myself, so low no one could hear. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. The memory of that cracked wine glass wouldn't leave me. Even now, I can see it, stem tilted, liquid seeping into the fabric, spreading like veins. My uncle's hand gripping it, so tight the stem snapped. His temper wasn't new. I'd grown up under its weight. But that night, it wasn't just temper. It was judgment. It was a verdict. And it was wrong. I remember reaching the bus stop, the bench cold under me, paint peeling off the metal. The street lamp buzzed overhead, attracting moths that beat themselves senseless against the light. The air tasted metallic, sharp, like rain was coming. My fingers tapped against my knees, restless. I could have called a cab, but I wanted the walk, the time to let the fire inside me burn. That was when I realized something strange. My hands had stopped trembling. My voice, though unspoken, was steady in my head. The humiliation was there, yes, but it had already started transforming into something else. Not despair, not weakness, resolve. A bus rolled up, brakes screeching, lights cutting through the dark. I climbed on, the stale smell of gasoline and old upholstery wrapping around me. I dropped into a seat near the back, pressed my forehead to the cool glass, and watched the streets pass in a blur of neon signs and empty sidewalks. My uncle thought he'd broken me that night. He thought his words would stick, hold me down like chains. But he'd only lit the fuse. The bus jolted over a pothole, throwing me forward. A little kid a few seats up giggled, the sound too bright for the heaviness inside me. His mother hushed him, the two of them bathed in the soft glow of the overhead light. I envied them for a moment, for their normalcy, their small world untouched by cruelty. I closed my eyes. I could still smell the burnt roast, the sour whiskey, the acrid tang of that red wine as it spread across the linen. I could still hear Jason's laugh under his breath, quick and sharp like a knife sliding from its sheath. My uncle's words echoed again, over and over. And then, just as the bus slowed at the next stop, something unexpected happened. A man climbed aboard carrying a box. He shuffled down the aisle, the cardboard damp and bending, the smell of sawdust and varnish spilling out of it. He dropped into the seat across from me, and when the box shifted, I saw what was inside. Old wooden tools. Hammers, a handsaw, worn handles smoothed by years of work. I stared. He caught my gaze and shrugged. Cleaning out my dad's shop. Place is shutting down. The words landed heavy, sharper than he could have known. Shutting down. A business, a shop, a legacy gone. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. The man tugged the box closer, the tools clattering against each other like bones. I turned away, pressed my forehead harder against the glass, but the smell of sawdust stayed with me, drilling straight into my memory of my uncle's store, of the shelves I used to stock, of the long hours I gave him for nothing but criticism. My chest tightened, and I whispered to myself, barely audible, one day, he'll be the one watching it all collapse. I didn't know then how soon that day would come. I didn't know how fast his empire was already crumbling. But as the bus rolled deeper into the night, and the city lights gave way to darker streets, I held on to that thought, that vow, like a weapon sharpening in my hands. And though I sat silent, the fire inside me whispered louder with every mile. He thinks I'm useless? He has no idea what I can do. The bus rattled over another pothole, jolting me awake from the haze I'd fallen into. The city lights had thinned out, leaving long stretches of dark storefronts and shuttered gas stations rolling past my window. My reflection stared back at me, pale, jaw tight, eyes burning in the dim glow. For a second, I didn't even recognize myself. That box of tools across the aisle hadn't moved. The man holding it had dozed off, his head resting against the glass, but I could still smell the sawdust leaking from the cracks in the cardboard. It wrapped around me, thick and musty, pulling me backward through time whether I wanted it to or not. I wasn't sitting on that bus anymore. I was 12 years old again, standing barefoot on the cold concrete floor of my uncle's hardware store. The place had always smelled of metal and oil, mixed with the faint sweetness of cedar planks stacked in the back. The buzzing of fluorescent lights overhead was constant, a kind of mechanical heartbeat. I'd stand there after school, broom in hand, sweeping up sawdust while Jason lounged in the office pretending to help with paperwork. I'd sweat through my shirt, dragging boxes twice my weight, fingers aching, while my uncle barked orders. "Don't scuff the tile, boy. You're lucky I'm even letting you work here." His words carried across the aisles, loud enough for customers to hear. My face would burn, but I kept moving. What else could I do? I remember one Saturday, customers were lined up at the register, waiting. Jason was supposed to be running it, but he was leaning against the counter, phone in hand, laughing at some joke I wasn't allowed to hear. My uncle walked in, saw the line, and his face darkened. He didn't yell at Jason. He turned to me instead. "You," he snapped, pointing. "Stop standing there like an idiot and get behind the register." I stammered. I don't know how." "Then figure it out." His voice cracked like a whip, echoing off the shelves. The customers shifted awkwardly, avoiding my eyes. Jason smirked and kept texting. I remember the beep of the scanner in my hands, my fingers clumsy on the buttons, sweat stinging my eyes. My uncle stood there with his arms crossed, shaking his head in exaggerated disappointment. "Pathetic," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. That word had followed me for years. Pathetic. Useless. Deadweight. On the bus, my jaw tightened so hard it hurt. I pressed my forehead harder against the glass, trying to push the memory away, but it clung to me like grease on skin. My uncle had built the store into what he loved to call an empire. At least, that's what he told anyone who would listen at church, at barbecues, at weddings. "Our family built this from nothing," he'd brag, slapping Jason on the back. "And this boy's gonna take it further than I ever could." Meanwhile, I was the invisible one, the errand runner, the shelf stocker, the one who got called kid, even at 25. The worst part? I believed him for a long time. The bus hissed to a stop at a red light. A teenage couple climbed on, laughing too loud, the girl carrying a bag of greasy fries. The smell hit me immediately: salt, oil, something scorched at the bottom of the fryer. My stomach growled, but I didn't move. I kept staring out the window, because another memory had clawed its way forward. I was 16, working late one night. The store was nearly empty, the hum of the coolers in the back filling the silence. I was mopping when I heard voices in the office. The door was cracked, light spilling out. My uncle was in there with Jason. I'll never forget his words. "One day, this is all gonna be yours," he told my cousin. His voice was warm, full of pride I had never once heard directed at me. "You've got leadership in your blood. You're not like him." He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. Jason grinned, his teeth glowing under the fluorescent light. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll make you proud." And I stood there, hidden in the shadows, gripping the mop handle so tight my knuckles ached, hearing every word like a nail driven into my chest. The bus lurched forward again, pulling me back into the present. My throat was dry, tongue heavy like sandpaper. I pulled out my phone, unlocked the screen. No messages. No calls. The emptiness of it mocked me. My uncle was right about one thing that night at dinner. I hadn't made it. My jobs had been short-lived, scattered. Retail, warehouse, office temp. None of them lasted. None of them felt like mine. I'd scraped by, rented cheap apartments with thin walls and the smell of old carpet, cooked dollar ramen while scrolling through social media and watching Jason post pictures of his vacations. And yet, I wasn't a failure because I couldn't do the work. I was a failure because I'd been told I was one, over and over, until it sank into my bones. I closed my eyes and breathed in through my nose, the faint scent of fried food from the couple's bag drifting back toward me. My stomach cramped, but underneath the hunger was something sharper. A realization. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn his approval. Maybe that was my real mistake. The bus screeched as it pulled to another stop. The man with the box of tools stirred, blinking awake. He adjusted the box on his lap, and one of the hammers clattered against the side. The sound rang out like a gavel, sharp and metallic. He caught me staring again. "Sorry," he muttered, voice gravelly. "It's fine," I said, my voice low. He studied me for a second, then shrugged. "Tools don't mean much when the shop's gone, right? Just junk now." I almost laughed, bitter and sharp. He had no idea how close that cut to the bone. But instead, I nodded. "Yeah, junk." The bus rumbled forward again, and I leaned back against the seat, my pulse still hammering. His words hung in the air, clinging to me. "When the shop's gone." My stop was coming up. I pulled the cord, the bell dinging overhead. The bus slowed, brakes squealing, and I stepped out into the night air. It was cooler now, the wind sharp enough to sting my cheeks. The street was quiet, lined with shuttered storefronts and flickering neon signs. I shoved my hands into my pockets and started walking. My apartment wasn't far, but with each step, the memories kept circling. The store, the insults, the way he always praised Jason while I was invisible. My fists clenched in my pockets. He thought I'd never matter. He thought I'd always be beneath him. But someday I would show him. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, the hallway smelling faintly of mildew and stale cigarettes. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Inside, the air was stuffy, the radiator clanking like it was about to give out. I dropped onto the couch, head in my hands. That was when my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, expecting another spam email. But no, it was his name flashing on the screen. My uncle. My chest went cold. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But curiosity, it clawed at me. Why would he be calling me now, after what he'd said, after humiliating me in front of everyone? I swiped to answer, my voice tight. "Hello." His voice came through, but it wasn't the booming, confident bark I'd always known. It was shaky, weary, almost desperate. I need your help." The silence after those words stretched on, heavy, suffocating. My heart pounded, ears ringing. "Help?" He was asking me for help? I almost laughed. But then he kept talking. His voice cracked as he admitted it. The business was in trouble. Sales dropping. Debts piling up. Suppliers pulling out. "I can't do it alone anymore," he said, breathing hard like the words were costing him something. "You've got a degree, ideas. Maybe you can fix it." I froze. The air in my apartment seemed to vanish, leaving only the sound of his ragged breathing in my ear. The man who'd called me useless was now calling me his last hope. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I'll think about it." "Please," he said quickly, too quickly. "Just come by tomorrow. We'll talk." The desperation in his tone was almost sweet, like honey laced with poison. I ended the call, staring at the dark screen in my hand. My pulse was racing, my thoughts a blur. He wanted me now. He needed me. And maybe, just maybe, this was the chance I'd been waiting for. But I didn't trust it. Not yet. Because deep down, I knew. Empires don't crumble overnight. And if his was falling, there had to be a reason. The question was, would I save him? Or let him drown? The next morning, I could barely keep my hands still long enough to lace up my boots. The call from my uncle hadn't left me all night. It circled in my head like a vulture. "I need your help." Those words didn't fit his mouth. They didn't belong in his voice. Every time I replayed them, I felt the same hot, dangerous mix of satisfaction and suspicion twisting in my gut. By the time I reached the edge of town, the sky was still heavy with morning fog. It curled around the rooftops, a gray shroud, and dampened every sound except the crunch of gravel under my tires. I pulled into the parking lot of the store I knew too well, the one I'd swept and stocked and bled inside for years. And my stomach dropped. The lot was nearly empty. Only 3 cars sat scattered across the cracked asphalt, weeds sprouting through fissures in the concrete like the ground itself was reclaiming what used to be his kingdom. The faded sign above the store flickered weakly, 2 bulbs dead, the once bright letters now chipped and ghostly. I stepped out of the car, the air thick with the smell of mildew and oil. My boots echoed too loudly as I crossed the lot. For the first time in my life, that building didn't look powerful. It looked sick. The glass doors slid open with a groan, and the smell hit me instantly. Dust, stale coffee, and something sour, like old paint left open too long. Inside, the place was quiet, too quiet. No hum of chatter, no steady beep of registers. Just the faint buzz of fluorescent lights and the squeak of my soles on the linoleum. Half the shelves were bare. The ones that weren't had items shoved together, spread thin, like a child trying to hide gaps in a row of teeth. A couple of employees lingered near the counter, whispering in low tones that cut off when they saw me. Their faces carried the same mix of fatigue and fear I remembered from years ago, only deeper now. I swallowed hard, fighting the strange, ugly thrill bubbling in my chest. This was his empire? This graveyard of dust and silence. About time you showed up. His voice came from the office door. I turned, and there he was. But he wasn't the man I remembered. Not the broad-shouldered tyrant whose words cracked like whips. His shirt hung loose around him, sweat stains spreading under his arms. His face was pale, almost gray, his eyes ringed with purple shadows. He looked smaller somehow, shriveled, not just from weight loss, but from pride stripped bare. Still, his tone carried a bite, though it was dulled. Get in here. I followed him into the office. The air was worse there, heavy with the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey. Papers littered the desk in frantic piles, invoices with red stamps screaming past due. The blinds were half closed, letting in stripes of watery light that cut across his face like prison bars. He slumped into his chair and rubbed his forehead. We're drowning, he muttered, voice hoarse. Suppliers won't ship. Banks breathing down my neck. I can't. His voice cracked, and for a moment he looked at me, not like I was worthless, but like I was the only lifeline left. I leaned against the desk, pretending to study the invoices. My heart was hammering, but I kept my face neutral. What do you want from me? You've got that degree, he said, waving his hand vaguely. Business. Finance. Whatever it is. You've got ideas. You're not like me. You understand the modern stuff. Maybe you can pull us out of this hole. The word maybe hung in the air like smoke. I stared at him, almost laughing. This man, the same man who had once told me, in front of everyone I loved, that I'd never be anything, was now telling me I had the skills to save him. My uncle, begging me, even if he didn't use the word. I let the silence stretch, savoring it like the slow sip of strong whiskey. Finally, I said, I'll take a look. But if I do this, I do it my way. He hesitated, eyes narrowing. For a second, I thought the old venom might return, but then his shoulders slumped. Fine, whatever it takes. Before I could reply, the office door slammed open. Jason strode in, reeking of expensive cologne, sunglasses perched on his head like a crown. What the hell is he doing here? He spat, jabbing a finger at me. I didn't move. I just met his eyes, steady, calm. He's here to help. My uncle snapped, his voice sharper than it had been all morning. Jason scoffed. Help? Him? He can barely help himself. He let out a laugh, cold and hollow. Dad, this is a mistake. For once, my uncle didn't back him. His face twisted with something like shame. You've had your chance, Jason. Look where we are. We need him. The look on Jason's face was worth every insult I'd endured as a kid. His jaw dropped, then clenched tight, rage flooding his cheeks with red. He opened his mouth to spit something venomous, but stopped. His eyes flicked toward the desk, then down to the ground. And that's when I saw it. A wad of crumpled bills was sticking out of Jason's jacket pocket. He shifted, trying to tuck it in, but not fast enough. The faint green edges peeked out like a guilty secret. I knew that look. I knew that walk. I'd seen it before, years ago, when he skimmed lunch money from my backpack and swore he hadn't touched it. He was stealing. From his own father. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just let the knowledge settle inside me like a blade sliding into its sheath. Jason stormed out, muttering curses under his breath, leaving the smell of his cologne hanging in the air like a rotten flower. My uncle groaned, rubbing his temples. Ignore him. He's not handling this well. I bit back a smile. Not handling this well. Jason was falling apart, and I had just seen the first crack. I spent the rest of the day walking the store, notebook in hand. Employees watched me cautiously, like they weren't sure if I was here to save them or fire them. The air buzzed faintly with the hum of dying lights. My fingers trailed along shelves coated in dust thick enough to write my name in. I asked questions. Inventory, suppliers, sales. They answered slowly, guarded at first, then with growing relief. By the time I returned to the office, I knew two things. The business was rotting from the inside, and my uncle was desperate enough to hand me the reins. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot, and said, So, can you do it? Can you save us? I stared at him for a long moment, letting the silence thicken. My pen tapped against the notebook, steady, deliberate. Then I smiled, slow and sharp. I can. But like I said, it'll be my way. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded, defeated. I turned to the window, staring out at the parking lot where weeds cracked through the concrete. The empire he'd once flaunted was already crumbling. All I had to do was decide, would I build it back up or finish tearing it down? The question burned in my mind, searing, alive. And when Jason stormed past the office again, his pocket bulging with stolen cash he thought no one had noticed, I realized something. I might not need to tear anything down myself. The family was already doing the job for me. Jason's face when he caught me staring at that wad of bills still lingers in my mind, like a kid with chocolate smeared across his mouth insisting he hadn't touched the cake. Only this wasn't candy money. This was survival cash. My uncle's last scraps. And Jason was bleeding him dry. I didn't say a word to my uncle that night. But inside, my pulse was pounding with something I hadn't felt in years: control. For once, I had the truth, and I didn't need to scream it. I just needed to wait. The following morning, I arrived before the store opened. The air was crisp, the lot still wrapped in fog, dew dripping off the rusted lampposts. The glass doors groaned as I pulled them open. The stale scent of dust and cardboard hit me again, but beneath it lingered something sharper, like burnt coffee, a bitter reminder of the sleepless nights this place had endured. I set my notebook down at the counter and started sketching out ideas. Not real plans yet, just sketches, like scaffolding before a building. I knew the numbers, but more importantly, I knew the weaknesses. And I knew where Jason would slip next. I didn't have to wait long. Around mid-morning, Jason barged in. His sunglasses were gone, replaced by bloodshot eyes and a jittery twitch in his jaw. He reeked of smoke and last night's liquor. "Dad says you're gonna run things now." His words dripped sarcasm, but there was panic underneath. He leaned close, his breath sour. "Don't get too comfortable. You don't belong here." I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned just slightly closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Funny thing, Jason, you might want to tuck your money deeper in your pocket next time. Someone could get the wrong idea." His eyes widened for half a second, just half, but it was enough. He stammered, then clenched his jaw, forcing a smirk. "You don't know what you're talking about." But I did. And now he knew that I knew. A few hours later, I caught him at it again. He thought I wasn't watching when he slipped into the back office, but the squeak of the filing cabinet gave him away. I moved silently, footsteps masked by the hum of the lights, and peeked through the crack of the half-closed door. There he was, my cousin, the heir apparent, the golden boy, stuffing envelopes of petty cash into his jacket like a street thief. His hands shook. His forehead gleamed with sweat under the buzzing fluorescent bulb. I almost stepped in, almost exposed him right there. But no, too soon. A public scene would only make my uncle defend him, excuse him. No, I needed Jason to bury himself so deep no one could pull him out. So instead, I coughed. Loud, deliberate. Jason jumped like he'd been shot, slamming the drawer shut and whirling around. His eyes met mine through the crack in the door. For a split second, his bravado cracked wide open, replaced with raw fear. I smiled. Then I walked away. By the third day, the store's employees had started coming to me directly. A soft-spoken cashier whispered about missing deposits. A stock boy mentioned how Jason took product samples home. Cases of soda, packs of batteries, things that never showed up on the books. The more I listened, the more the puzzle assembled itself. Jason wasn't just careless, he was reckless. At lunch, I sat across from my uncle in his dim office. The blinds were half drawn, casting the room in stripes of weak light. His hands trembled slightly as he picked at his sandwich, crumbs scattering across invoices like confetti. "Numbers don't lie," I told him, sliding a few pages from my notebook across the desk. "Inventory's bleeding. Cash is leaking. If you want this place alive, you need someone who can stop the bleeding." His eyes scanned the notes, lips pressing tight. "And you think you're that someone?" I held his gaze. "I don't think. I know." He sighed, leaning back. "Jason won't like it." I didn't miss a beat. "Jason's the problem." The words hung in the air, sharp, final. He didn't reply, just closed his eyes like the weight of them was crushing his chest. That evening, I found myself alone in the stockroom, the smell of cardboard and oil heavy in the air. A single bulb flickered overhead, throwing shadows across the walls. As I moved boxes, I noticed something wedged behind a stack of canned goods, a crumpled envelope. I pulled it free. Inside, cash. Hundreds, maybe more. Hidden so carelessly, it almost begged to be found. I froze, listening. Faintly, I heard footsteps approaching, steady and quick. Jason's voice, low and angry, drifting closer. Without thinking, I slipped the envelope into my jacket and stepped into the aisle. Jason appeared a second later, his face tight, eyes scanning the shelves like a predator sniffing for prey. "What are you doing back here?" he demanded. I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Just moving boxes." "You." His jaw flexed. He glanced past me at the stack of goods, then back at me, suspicion hardening in his stare. But he didn't ask. He just pushed past, muttering under his breath. I walked out with the envelope burning in my pocket. That night, in my tiny apartment, I emptied the envelope onto my kitchen table. The cash smelled faintly of cigarettes and sweat. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. Here it was, proof. But something deeper stirred in me as I stared at it. This wasn't just Jason stealing from his father. This was Jason stealing from the business that had once been my cage. He was gutting the empire brick by brick, and he didn't even know I was watching. And suddenly, I knew what to do. I wouldn't just expose him. That would be too easy, too quick. No, I would use him. I would let him think he was winning, even as he dug his own grave. I leaned back in my chair, the single bulb above buzzing like a wasp, and whispered to the empty room. "You're going to hand me everything, Jason. Piece by piece." The next day, the store buzzed with a rare kind of energy. Employees glanced at me with curiosity as I sketched plans on the counter, laying out small changes. Reorganized shelves, local suppliers, simple marketing ideas. My uncle watched from the office window, his face unreadable. Jason, though, was unraveling. He stomped through the aisles, barking at workers, slamming boxes. Every move I made, he countered. Every suggestion I voiced, he mocked. But his eyes kept darting to me, flicking with that same fear I'd seen when I caught him in the back office. And then it happened. Near closing time, a supplier stormed in. A burly man with grease-stained hands and a voice like gravel. He slammed a clipboard on the counter. "Where's my payment, Jason? You're 3 weeks late." The room froze. Jason paled, stammering. It's coming, I." The supplier cut him off, voice rising. "I want my money, or I pull every shipment. You hear me? Every damn one." The silence that followed was thick as tar. My uncle appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, skin pale. Employees gathered, whispering. And me? I stood there, calm, watching Jason flail. For the first time, everyone could see what I'd known all along. Jason wasn't a leader. He was a liability. The supplier stormed out, leaving the door rattling in his wake. Jason turned, eyes darting wildly, sweat dripping down his temples. He looked at his father, then at me. And in that instant, I saw it, the crack widening into a chasm. My uncle's gaze shifted slowly from his son to me. And though he said nothing, the message was clear. Do something. Fix this. The power shifted, right there in the middle of that dusty, dying store. And Jason knew it. I could see it in his face, the panic, the desperation. He wasn't just afraid of losing the store. He was afraid of losing everything he thought he was entitled to. I didn't move. Not yet. I let the silence stretch, thick and electric. And in that silence, one thought pulsed through me like fire. He's going to destroy himself. All I have to do is let him. The silence after the supplier stormed out was suffocating, broken only by the hum of the flickering lights and Jason's ragged breathing. My uncle's eyes were locked on me, not him. That shift, small, almost invisible, was everything. It was the crack in the dam I'd been waiting for. Jason saw it too. His face went blotchy red, like a kettle ready to blow, and he slammed his fist on the counter so hard the pen jar toppled, spilling ink-stained pens across the tiles. The clatter echoed through the room. "Don't just stand there," he shouted, spit flying. "You think you're so smart? Fix it." I let the words hang. Employees were staring now, eyes wide, mouths tight. The power dynamic had flipped right in front of them, and Jason couldn't stand it. I leaned down, calmly picked up one of the fallen pens, and set it back on the counter. Then I looked him dead in the eye and said softly, "I will." The employees scattered quickly, pretending to busy themselves, but I could feel the shift in the air. People avoided Jason, their movements quicker, lighter when they drifted toward me. Even the old stock boy, the one Jason usually barked at, gave me a nod of respect as he passed. Jason, meanwhile, sulked in the corner, gnawing his fingernails. The fluorescent light above him buzzed and flickered, casting his shadow huge and warped against the wall, like some grotesque version of himself. That night, after we closed, I sat alone at the counter with the old ledger books spread in front of me. The numbers bled red ink across the pages, each entry a bruise left by Jason's recklessness. I could hear the faint scuttle of mice in the walls, the distant hum of traffic outside, but mostly I just heard my own pulse hammering. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about dismantling him. The blueprint came together in whispers, in strokes of my pen across paper. Step 1. Trap him with his own greed. Step 2. Bait him into making mistakes big enough that even my uncle couldn't deny them. Step 3. Position myself as the only solution left standing. It wasn't enough to reveal him. I needed him to burn in front of everyone. Slow, inevitable, undeniable. And fate delivered my first opportunity faster than I could have planned. The next afternoon, a woman stormed into the store, mid-40s, hair in a messy bun, eyes blazing. She slammed a receipt on the counter in front of Jason so hard the paper nearly tore. "You sold me expired baby formula," she snapped, voice trembling with fury. "My kid's been sick all night. You want to explain that?" The store went silent. Even the hum of the refrigerators seemed to pause. Jason stammered, glancing around wildly. His face went pale, then flushed red. I didn't." I stepped forward before he could spin deeper. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I'm so sorry. Let me fix this right now." I took the receipt from her hand, marched to the shelf, and pulled every can of formula into the cart. The dust that rose from the cans told the story. These hadn't been rotated in months. I wheeled the cart back, locked eyes with Jason, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This never should have happened." Her fury melted into shaky relief as I refunded her money and added a gift card on top. She left with a muttered thanks, but the damage was done. Every employee in the store had seen it. Jason hadn't just failed, he'd endangered a child. That night, I caught him in the parking lot, pacing under the orange glow of the flickering lamp post. Cigarette smoke curled around his head like a ghost. His hands shook as he lit another. "You set me up," he hissed when he saw me. I laughed, cold, humorless. "You think I put dust on those cans? You did that all on your own." His teeth clenched. "You're trying to steal this place from me." I stepped closer, close enough to smell the acrid tang of smoke on his clothes. "I don't need to steal it. You're handing it to me every time you screw up." For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists balled tight, knuckles white. But then he just spat on the ground and stalked off, muttering curses into the night. 2 days later, my uncle called me into the office. The blinds were drawn again, stripes of light slicing across his face. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders slumped, fingers tapping nervously on the desk. "Tell me honestly," he said, voice low. "Can this place be saved?" The question hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I thought about the years I'd spent hating this place, the smell of grease and cardboard that clung to my childhood, the way it had felt like a prison. But then I thought of Jason's sneer, the way he shoved his failures onto everyone else, the way he drained this business like a parasite. And I realized, saving the store wasn't just about my uncle. It was about proving I wasn't useless. "Yes," I said firmly, "but not with Jason in charge." The following week, I put the second part of my blueprint into motion. I suggested to my uncle that Jason handle a delivery, just a simple inventory check, something even a half-competent manager could do. My uncle hesitated, but Jason, desperate to prove himself after the baby formula disaster, jumped at the chance. I made sure the supplier arrived early. Jason strolled in late, sunglasses on despite the gray skies, reeking faintly of cologne that couldn't quite mask stale alcohol. The supplier was furious, already halfway out the door. "Where the hell have you been?" the man barked. "I got 3 more stops today." Jason fumbled with the clipboard, tried to smooth talk, but the supplier wasn't having it. He shoved the paperwork into my hands instead. "At least this one knows what he's doing," he muttered, jerking his thumb at me. Jason's face turned a shade of purple I didn't think human skin could reach. He snatched the clipboard back, but his hands shook so badly he dropped it. Papers scattered across the floor, fluttering like wounded birds. Everyone was watching again, and no one was laughing with him. That night, I stayed late, alone in the stockroom. The air was heavy with dust and the faint metallic tang of spilled nails from a broken box. I could hear Jason in the front, arguing with someone on the phone. His voice was tight, desperate. Curious, I crept closer. Through the cracked door, I caught fragments. "I told you, I'll get the money." "No, he doesn't know. Just give me more time." A pause. Then, quieter, almost a whisper. "If Dad finds out, I'm screwed." My stomach tightened. This wasn't just carelessness. Jason was in debt. Serious debt. And he was using the store's money to cover it. This was the twist I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about incompetence. It was about survival. His. And suddenly, I realized something chilling. Jason wasn't going to stop stealing. He couldn't. The next morning, I came in early and checked the safe. Sure enough, deposits were short again. I closed it gently, the steel cold against my fingertips, and whispered to myself, "Got you." By noon, the employees were whispering about a new rumor, that Jason had been seen meeting shady men in the parking lot at night. I didn't spread it, but I didn't stop it either. It spread like smoke through dry grass, feeding itself. Jason sensed it. He stormed through the aisles, snapping at workers, knocking over displays. His paranoia was eating him alive, and I didn't need to lift a finger. All I had to do was watch. But then, an unexpected turn. That evening, my uncle called a meeting in the office. Jason, me, and him. The blinds were down, the light dim, the air heavy with tension. My uncle's face was pale, his voice tight. "I've been hearing things," he said slowly. "About missing money. About late payments. About you, Jason." Jason froze, then shot a glare at me, his eyes wild. "He's lying. He's turning you against me." I didn't flinch. I simply slid the envelope I'd found weeks ago onto the desk. The cash inside spilled across the wood like blood. The room went dead silent. My uncle's face drained of color. Jason's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. And I knew, in that moment, that the blueprint had worked. The noose was tightening. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was how violently Jason would fight back when cornered. Because the look he gave me then wasn't just anger. It was hatred. Pure, unfiltered, dangerous hatred. And I realized, as the air thickened with silence, that this wasn't over. Not even close. Jason's glare bored into me like he was trying to set me on fire with his eyes. My uncle sat frozen behind the desk, one hand on the spilled cash, the other trembling slightly against the armrest. Nobody spoke. The air in that office was thick, buzzing with unspoken words, like static right before a lightning strike. Then Jason broke it. He lunged forward, both palms slamming down on the desk so hard that the coffee mug tipped, spilling lukewarm liquid across the papers. "You think this proves anything?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "That money isn't mine. It's store money I was keeping safe." I didn't blink. My voice stayed calm, almost eerily calm compared to his. "Then why was it under the seat of your car?" The silence that followed was sharper than glass. My uncle's eyes snapped from Jason to me, confusion shifting towards something darker. Doubt. Suspicion. And Jason saw it too. He straightened slowly, his breath coming in short, uneven bursts. His eyes darted around the office like a cornered animal searching for an escape. Then, in a tone that was both mocking and venomous, he said, "You've been setting me up from day one." "Or maybe," I said, lowering my voice until it was almost a whisper, "you've been digging your own grave, and I just stopped covering the dirt for you." His jaw tightened. His hand twitched toward the envelope, like he wanted to scoop the money back up, erase the evidence. But my uncle's hand came down over it first, flat, heavy, decisive. That tiny gesture carried the weight of everything Jason feared. Jason's mouth opened, but whatever excuse he had died in his throat. His own father's silence was louder than any accusation. The meeting broke with no resolution. My uncle dismissed us both, saying he needed time to think. Jason stormed out, slamming the office door so hard the blinds rattled. I followed slower, deliberately calm, letting the echo of his rage announce who was losing control. When I stepped into the store, the shift in atmosphere hit me immediately. The employees had heard everything, or at least enough. They scattered when Jason stomped past, but their eyes lingered on me. Some nodded faintly, others avoided my gaze, but the message was the same. The tide had turned. Jason might not have been officially dethroned yet, but in their eyes, he was already bleeding out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, the clock ticking like a countdown. Every creak of the house made me glance at the door, half expecting Jason to burst in. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, tires crunching on gravel outside. Headlights swept across the living room curtains. My chest tightened. I moved to the window, pulled the curtain just enough to peek through. Jason's car sat in the driveway. He wasn't alone. Two shadowy figures stepped out of the passenger side. I ducked back instinctively, heart slamming in my throat. Their voices were muffled, but one carried sharp in the night. "You said you'd have the money." I held my breath as footsteps crunched closer. Jason hissed back, low and frantic. "I just need more time. My dad's buying it. I'll get access, I swear." A pause. Then the other voice, colder. "Clock's ticking. You miss again, it won't just be your job." A car door slammed. Tires spun. The sound faded into the distance, leaving only the crickets and the ringing in my ears. I stayed at the window long after they were gone, staring at Jason's hunched silhouette under the porch light. His head was buried in his hands. And suddenly I realized, Jason wasn't just dangerous because of his rage. He was dangerous because he was desperate. The next day, I decided to push. Hard. I came in early, gathered the employees in the stockroom, and spoke plainly. "If Jason stays in charge, this place won't last a month. You've all seen it. You've all lived it. But if we take control together, if we run this right, we can save it. And no one will ever talk down to you again." The words hung heavy. A few employees shifted uncomfortably, fear etched in their faces. But then the old stock boy, the one Jason always humiliated, raised his chin and said, "I'm with you." One by one, heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement rose. And just like that, the store was mine, not on paper, not yet, but in loyalty. And that was the power Jason could never buy back. By midday, Jason showed up late again, sunglasses hiding bloodshot eyes. He barked orders, but they bounced off the employees like stones off steel. They didn't even pretend to respect him anymore. He saw it, felt it. His face twisted with something raw, almost pitiful. He turned to me, sneering, "You think you've won? You think Dad's gonna hand you the keys?" I stepped close enough that only he could hear me. "I don't need to win. You're losing all by yourself." That broke him. His sneer collapsed into something unhinged. He shoved past me, stormed into the office, and slammed the door. Minutes later, shouting erupted inside. My uncle's voice. Jason's voice. Papers flying. A loud crash, like a chair tipping over. Then, silence. The door creaked open. Jason emerged, face flushed, eyes wild. He pushed through the store like a storm, knocking over a display of chips. "This isn't over," he screamed, loud enough for every customer and employee to hear. "You're all sheep. You think he's better than me? You'll regret this." Gasps rippled through the aisles. Kids clutched their mothers. A customer muttered, "What the hell is wrong with him?" Jason staggered out into the parking lot, chest heaving, hands trembling. He looked less like a man in control and more like someone unraveling thread by thread. I followed, stopping just at the doorway. The sun was dipping, casting his figure in a long, broken shadow. For a split second, I almost pitied him. Almost. But pity turned to dread when I saw what he pulled from his jacket. Not a weapon. Something worse. Keys. My uncle's keys. Jason fumbled with them, eyes darting to the store, to the office windows. And then I understood. He wasn't just going to run. He was going to take the last shred of control he had. The safe, the money, maybe even the entire business. The employees spilled out behind me, whispering, tense. My uncle appeared in the office window, his face pale, his hand pressed against the glass like he was too stunned to move. And there was Jason, at the edge of the lot, keys glinting in the fading sun, looking back at me with a smile that wasn't triumph but pure spite. Then he bolted. I ran after him. The gravel crunched under my shoes. The wind whipped at my face. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Jason reached his car, jammed the key into the ignition, but it stuck. Wrong key. He cursed, slamming the steering wheel. I lunged for the door, yanking it open. "Give them back," I shouted, my hand reaching for the keys. He swung at me, fist grazing my cheekbone. a flash of pain exploding across my face. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. We struggled, arms tangled, keys clinking between us like the prize in some twisted game. His breath was hot with cigarettes and rage, his eyes wide, manic. And just as I got a grip on the ring, he whispered through gritted teeth, "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." His whisper still hangs in the air. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." As the keys jab into my palm, slick with sweat, caught between us. My cheek throbs where his fist grazed me. My chest is heaving, breath sharp like broken glass in my throat. And Jason's eyes, those wild, unblinking eyes, burn into mine with a fury that doesn't just want to win, it wants to destroy. I grip harder. The ring digs into my skin, sharp edges biting deep, but I refuse to let go. "You're done, Jason," I shout, the words shaking with adrenaline. "This ends now." He snarls, twisting his body, trying to throw me off balance. My shoulder slams against the car frame with a sickening crack. Pain shoots down my arm, but I hold on tighter, fueled by something stronger than anger. Something primal, the refusal to be crushed again. The sound of the struggle echoes across the lot. Gravel crunches under our feet, metal groans where we slam against the car. Behind me, I hear the muffled gasps of employees gathering near the doorway, their voices rising in alarm. And then, above it all, my uncle's voice roars, "Jason, enough." For a split second, Jason freezes. His father's words cut through him like a blade. But instead of stopping, he snaps. With a guttural yell, he rips the keys free and stumbles backward, clutching them tight against his chest like their life itself. He spins toward the store door, toward the employees watching, toward his father's silhouette in the window. And I realize in horror, he's not running anymore. He's about to drag everyone into his downfall. "Don't you get it?" Jason screams, his voice breaking, spraying spit into the air. "This store, this family, it's mine. You all think he's the hero? He's nothing without me. I carried this place." The employees recoil, some shielding children who happen to be shopping, others clutching one another like witnesses to a disaster. Jason's hands shake violently as he fumbles with the keys, trying to fit them into the store's lock even though the door's already open. He's not thinking straight. His body jerks like a puppet on broken strings. And then he turns, pointing the key ring at us like a weapon, the metal glinting under the fluorescent light spilling from the doorway. His face contorts into something almost unrecognizable. Rage, grief, fear, all mashed together. "If I lose this," he screams, "I lose everything. And I'd rather burn it down than let him take it from me." My stomach drops. For a terrifying moment, I believe him. I picture flames swallowing the aisles, the shelves collapsing, the place that raised me turning into ash because Jason can't stand to be less than me. The employees murmur, restless, edging back. Some want to run. Some want to step forward. But they all look at me, waiting. I take one step closer, my voice lower now, steady, cutting through his hysteria. "Jason, look at yourself. This isn't power. This is you begging. Begging for scraps of control you already lost." His hand trembles. The keys rattle. For a fraction of a second, something flickers in his eyes, uncertainty, regret, maybe even shame. But just as quickly, it's gone. He lunges at me. The move is clumsy, desperate, but the force behind it is raw. We collide again, bodies slamming against the hood of his car. The metal groans under us. The horn blares once, sharp and jarring. His elbow digs into my ribs, knocking the air out of me. I taste blood in my mouth, coppery and thick. My hands claw for the keys, but he's gripping them so hard his knuckles are bone white. The crowd behind us yells, some shouting my name, others screaming, "Stop him." But no one dares step closer. This is between us now. Jason's face is inches from mine, twisted and soaked with sweat. "Say it." He growls, spit flying into my face. "Say you'll never beat me." My chest burns. My vision blurs. But I force the words out, each one cutting through the chaos. I already did. The shift is instant. His body stiffens, his grip falters, like the truth finally pierced through his delusion. In that split second, I wrench the keys free, the ring slicing my fingers open. Jason staggers back, stunned. His chest heaves, his eyes dart wildly around the lot. He sees the employees, their faces hard now, united, not in fear, but in defiance. He sees my uncle at the doorway, shoulders squared, his silence louder than any lecture. And for the first time, Jason looks small. Not the tyrant he pretended to be, just a man undone by his own lies. But instead of collapsing, he laughs. A hollow, broken laugh that chills me more than his rage ever did. "Fine," he says, voice cracking. "If I can't have it, neither can you." He spins toward the car, fumbling in the back seat. Panic spikes in my chest. I don't know what he's reaching for, but I know it's bad. I sprint forward, adrenaline overriding every ache, every drop of blood. My hand clamps down on his wrist just as he yanks out a red plastic gas can. The stench of gasoline hits my nose like a slap. The crowd behind us screams in unison. "No!" I roar, yanking the can from his grip. We wrestle for it, the liquid sloshing dangerously inside. Drops spill onto the pavement, the sharp chemical burn filling the air. Jason's voice breaks into a sob. "It was mine. It was always supposed to be mine." I shove the can aside, sending it clattering across the lot. My hands lock onto his shoulders, forcing him still. "It was never yours to destroy." He crumbles. Not with a fight. Not with another scream. He just collapses. His knees buckle, his body folds, and he sinks to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. His chest heaves, his sobs raw and ugly, echoing into the night. The employees watch in stunned silence. My uncle steps forward at last, the weight of years etched into his face. He kneels beside Jason, not touching him, just close enough that the gesture says everything words can't. Jason doesn't look up. He can't. I step back, my hands still trembling, my shirt soaked with sweat and streaked with gasoline. The keys dig into my palm, heavy as chains, yet somehow lighter than they've ever felt before. No one cheers. No one claps. The victory is too heavy, too tragic for celebration. But something shifts in the air. Relief. Safety. The unspoken understanding that Jason's reign is over. Employees begin guiding customers out gently, murmuring reassurances. The night quiets, the chaos fading into an almost eerie calm. I stand there in the middle of the lot, the hum of the streetlights buzzing in my ears, the taste of blood still sharp on my tongue. My uncle looks at me then, really looks, and for the first time in my life, I see pride in his eyes. But it's not the keys in my hand that matter. It's the people behind me, the ones who chose me, the ones who believed. And as Jason's sobs soften into silence, one truth roots itself deep in my chest. This isn't just about a store. It's about a legacy, one I'll protect, no matter what it takes. That's where I'll leave it. Jason broken, the employees united, my uncle watching. And me, bloodied, exhausted, but standing, keys in hand, staring at the future I never thought I'd have the strength to claim. Because in the end, it wasn't the fight that made me win. It was the choice to stop being afraid.